Hi, this is David Gornoski, host of A Neighbor's Choice and Things Hidden podcast, as well as some of our other programs like Science and You with our chief science advisor, Dr. Yu, and our seed oil survival series that we continue to have great fun unpacking the truth of nutrition. I wanted to give you a quick little message saying we appreciate all the support that we get from our uh, monthly contributors and our one time donation supporters. And we'd encourage all of you to go to our website, a neighborschoice.com, click on contribute, and make a monthly pledge today, whether it's $1, $5, 15, 20, 50, whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Just be a part of building this new media project that we've developed to empower and inform, to inspire, to kickstart a scientific renaissance, an anthropological breakthrough and reformation in the church. All these things are possible with your support right now. So make that commitment today and help us keep doing the productions that we have. Thank you. Well, today we have a returning guest, someone that we've always enjoyed to hear his feedback and analysis of what's going on in our foreign policy, uh, shenanigans, world affairs, and all that. And he's a former CIA analyst and a veteran, Larry C. Johnson. How you doing, sir?
I'm well, Dave. Good to be with you.
It's great to have you back. Now, your blog is quite popular, sonar21.com. But people have to find it through outside the infrastructure of the officially approved internet. When you type in your name, it doesn't pop up anywhere on Google. And I said that's by design there because
Oh yeah. They want to
very
shut me.
popular website with your name all blasted. Their index should be able to pick that up. That's where you're at.
Yeah, they don't like what I'm saying. I'm not a favorite of the deep state.
Yeah. So, tell us for folks who are not familiar with your work, why, as someone who worked in the CIA, why are you so critical overall of what's going on in our foreign policy?
Well, it's not just that I worked at the CIA. So I was with the Central Intelligence Agency for 4 years. I did some work on the operations side of the house, but most of my career was as an analyst. I left CIA in 1989, October or end of September, and went to the State Department Office of Counterterrorism. And so there I shifted from intelligence analysis to policy. And I was involved with anti-terrorism assistance training, transportation security, and coordinating and working with U.S. military special operations in overseas missions to combat terrorism, such as, dealing with the release of the hostages in Lebanon, as an example. That lasted 4 years, and then I became a consultant. And during the ensuing 23 years, one of the things I conducted international money laundering investigations, international product counterfeiting investigations, but then I also supplied expertise to the U.S. military special operations forces and was directly involved with scripting over 253 terrorist exercises, counterterrorism exercises. So I have a unique perspective that most people who've worked in the U.S. government do not. Because I've worked in the intelligence side of the house, I've worked at State Department, and my work at State Department put me in close contact with the FBI and with the Federal Aviation Administration and the Maritime Administration. And then I worked with the military, with the special operations community in a highly classified environment. So I get a sense of sort of the whole picture, the big picture. And so I'm able to bring all those skills together. I sort of know what questions to ask. And when you hear certain things, you're getting scammed or that they're deliberately not mentioning something.
Yeah. You mentioned we're going to talk about the latest war drumbeat, but you mentioned investigating money laundering. Did that ever put you on the trail of anything connected to the Jeffrey Epstein network? I know he has been long suspected to be a high caliber money launderer, but maybe that was out of your purview or your time.
Yeah, no, he never popped up in our investigations, but the Clinton Foundation did.
Yeah.
The Clintons were actually, they were involved with actually sending money to terrorist groups in the Middle East.
Really?
There's documentary evidence of that, but it's currently in a sealed court filing, so it can't be publicly revealed yet.
Wow. And there's nothing. How come they don't get in trouble for that? You can't even, you know.
Because with the Clintons,
Yeah.
you get a pass.
Yeah.
You,
Were they used as a cutout by our government to do that type of
no, no,
action?
no, no, no. They were doing it. They were funneling money as sort of part of a quid pro quo. They would pass money to certain organizations in exchange for receiving money from other nation states in the Middle East.
Wow.
They had a vested interest in supplying money to those to Hamas and to Hezbollah, for example.
Wow. So here we are, speaking of Hamas, we've got this continual conflict in Israel going on with Hamas and Gaza. So many civilians and children dead, and there seems to be no sane solution on the horizon here. And now apparently, we're hearing about. I saw Russell Brand. He said, the TV didn't even tell people about the Houthis, and all of a sudden they say, "Hey, here's the Houthis. You have to hate them." And and the public says,
Yeah.
"Okay, never heard of it, but okay, we hate them."
Yeah,
And the Houthis are now on the mainstream radar for the public, even though folks who are paying attention to this know about what's been going on with our sanctioning of and blockades of Yemen. And now it's spilling out into what happened recently with this attack, where we lost 3 service members of the United States government, who it seems to me most people believe they were kind of put there as sitting ducks to be easily drawing America into further conflict in the region, including perhaps with Iran because of Iran's relationship with these different organizations.
Yeah, I don't buy into the bait theory. I mean, that base has been there for over 10 years.
Okay.
Okay. So one attack in 10 years, that's not bait.
Yeah.
But the Department of Defense is doing a lot of covering up here. Number one, the dead were these 2 black females and this 1 black male, right?
Yeah.
And the story is the drone hit the sleeping quarters.
Yeah.
So is that dude sleeping with those 2 women?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Or do we have co-ed housing?
Right.
I know when I went to Iraq in 2006 with the Joint Special Operations Command, and I was at Balad, and they put me in, it was like a Quonset hut. It would hold 12 people. The thing, we never had the lights on in there the entire week that I was there. And everybody's bunk was basically a tent. I mean, you had blankets and everything, so you'd block out any light. But that was all guys. So I'm not sure what sort of sleeping arrangements they had over here. But that's point number one. And then over 47 other people were wounded. So the average drone, unless it was like a Shahid, which is just packed with explosives, like a 68-pound warhead, wouldn't cause that that kind of damage. So that's number one. Then the story's out that this drone, they thought it was a friendly. Well, you don't think because if the drone's coming back, it's either emitting a friendly IFF, identify friend or foe signal, or it's not. There's no gray area there. Either it's emitting or it's not emitting. If it's not emitting, then your air defense is supposed to shoot it down. There's the assumption that there was air defense there. That may be a big assumption. It may be very likely that there was no air defense system in place. Or if there was, that the people responsible for manning it, operating it, were incompetent, untrained, transgender, someone with the proper pronouns but didn't know how to run the damn system. But the Pentagon's clearly covering up all of these details in terms of how, what even the nature of the explosive was. This is like, say, an unmanned aerial system, UAS. Well, that can encompass a lot of things. Could have been a missile. So, and it is, it appears that a group, an Islamic, what they call a radical Islamic group in Iraq, a Shia-based group, is responsible for the attack. Well, the United States has been illegally occupying Syria, and we've been in Iraq really against the wishes of that government. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that we're targets. This base in Jordan, people need to understand. So why was that base there? Okay, we've got at least two, and at one point we had like 4 or 5 different bases inside Syria. How do you get your military personnel from the United States into Syria? Well, we're sort of at war with Syria, an undeclared war. So you don't fly into Damascus, land a plane, and the guys get off and then go off to fight the Syrian government. You don't fly some troop carrier and parachute them in. What you do is you fly them into Jordan, and then they are either helicoptered out to this base that's on the border, or they're trucked out, or some form of ground transportation, processed, and then deployed from that base. Tower 22. It's a logistics deployment center. They deploy those troops from there across the border into Al-Tam or into the other areas of operation. That's what that base was there for. And this National Army Reserve Unit, their engineering group, they're there to build stuff and repair stuff. That's what they're due, to keep, maintain the base so it can continue to operate. Mm-hmm. So there's some belief that that base was accidentally struck, that the intended target was Al-Tam. It's about 18 miles away across the border to the north of Tower 22. So, maybe that's a possibility. What was curious, though, is the CENTCOM, Central Command, the military, the guys with the control and authority and that run that base. They came out quickly with a statement saying that this base in Jordan was hit. And then within hours, the Jordanians came and go, wasn't our base. No, the base, there's no base there. Mm-hmm. And no, it had to be in Syria. They're making a mistake. Well, it was in Jordan. What this highlights is that this base, was not necessarily classified, but it was never been talked about that I can figure out over the last, 10 years. It's been kept very, very, very low key. Why? Well, the King of Jordan King Abdullah has always had very close relationships with the West. He was raised, educated in the United Kingdom. He's always had close working association with U.S. military, special forces personnel. And so he's pro-Western. However, he doesn't want to advertise that in a way by putting a base like what exists at Tower 22. Probably better to call it an outpost. It was not some massive sprawling facility like Fort Bragg or Fort Benning. But they initially came out and denied it. Oh, no, we don't have it. Then they later sort of reluctantly conceded. Well, this, it's created political problems for him. And normally it's in Central Command, which is based just up the road from me in Tampa, Florida, at MacDill Air Force Base, is the central headquarters. They have attached to them what's called a POLAD, a political advisor. Well, this political advisor is a State Department diplomat, a senior person who's there specifically to deal with the interactions with countries like Jordan. So at a minimum, before they put out that press release, that POLAD should have been talking to the embassy in Jordan, and then possibly with the government of Jordan, the Kingdom of Jordan, to coordinate a messaging on this. And they didn't do that. That's just, unprofessional incompetence.
Yeah. So now, though, the fallout has been, of course, Lindsey Graham, Nikki Haley, all the usuals saying, we got to go to war with Iran, we got to strike Iran. So let's kind of go to that. Where do we stand here in your analysis of the facts and the likelihood that this kind of thing could turn into a more direct confrontation with Iran, something they've wanted for
Yeah,
decades.
yeah. Well, I think it's likely. I'd put chances at better than 50%. It depends on who gets the final say.
Mhm.
If the political pressures win out, then yes, we're going to do it.
Mhm.
If the folks over at the Pentagon win out, we won't do it. The
Wait, so
reason,
so the Pentagon doesn't. So the Pentagon folks don't want to go to war with Iran. You're
no,
saying?
they know we'll get our ass kicked.
Yeah,
United States will lose.
yeah,
The people need to let that sink in. We keep hearing this nonsense about we've got the greatest military in the world. No, we don't. We got the most expensive military in the world.
yeah.
We got the most overconfident military in the world. We got but across the board, our readiness and our abilities to sustain operations simply is not there. And we're seeing that with the Houthis. Hell, we can't stop the Houthis from launching drones and missiles. And we've been bombing them for 3 weeks. And you know what? We can bomb them for 3 more months or 3 more years, and they're going to continue to do it because we don't have the ability to stop them.
Yeah.
And people need to wake the hell up. I mean, I am disgusted with this braggadocio that dominates in the United States, and nitwits like Nikki Haley and Lindsey Graham. Oh yeah, let's go bomb Iran. Number one, Iran's got competent air defense. They've got better air defense system than the United States has. Their air defense system beats ours every time. Number one. Number two, they have a whole host of long-range missiles that can damage and destroy U.S. bases scattered throughout the Middle East. And we don't have an air defense system to stop those attacks if Iran decides to come after us.
Right.
Same on cyber attacks. So the United States is trying to pick a fight that it can't win. And let's go with the basic principle. We're saying, wait a second. Iran supplied that group those weapons and they attacked us. Therefore, we have the right to go after them. Okay. If we're going to play that game, then let's play the damn game. We're supplying weapons to Ukraine that Ukraine is using to attack and kill Russian civilians. By that same principle, Russia then should be able to attack us and destroy us. Which is it? If someone is guilty of aiding and abetting an attack on you, do you have the right to respond? Then we're setting ourselves up for a big confrontation with Russia. So, I mean, this is, it looks like cooler heads though are starting to prevail in this, that the Biden administration is sending back channel messages to Iran, and they apparently said, hey, why don't you, well, we're going to hit this site, get all your people out, and we'll just say that we hit it and destroyed it, and we'll save face. And you say, well, that's not possible. Well, yes, it is. It happened under Barack Obama, and it happened under Donald Trump. Remember the sarin gas attacks in Syria, supposedly by the government? Well, they weren't by the government. They were by operatives carried out with support from the CIA and from British intelligence. But the United States portrayed it as, oh, yeah, this was the Iranian government doing it, and we're going to strike back at them. And so they authorized the attack. I know for a fact from people who were sitting in Al Udeid Air Force Base at the Central Command's Air Force operation, what's called the CAOC, the Combined Air Operations Center, that the general in charge of that center got on the phone with his Russian counterpart and said, hey, Sergey, yeah, hey, listen, we're going to be hitting this base, and gave him the coordinates. And yeah, we're going to be hitting that in about 6 hours. So, you might want to get your people out and clear everything out. And so and then the news, CNN and Fox, oh, the United States bombed that, and oh, it was a massive strike. And what I'm telling you is this is all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's theater. It's designed to feed the American public complete, unadulterated bullshit. And it is just, I mean, I'm getting tired of it. because I've seen it's been going on for too long. And when all said and done, we're killing a lot of foreigners. We're killing women and children. America's got blood on its hands. And if you believe in a just God, I don't think God can forgive us for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what we see going on right now with the proxy conflicts with Israel and Hamas and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia, there's lots of civilians, more so, and looks like more so in the Gaza conflict. They're getting the brunt of those attacks, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you listen to the belly aching from the Israelis. Oh, we're victims of terrorism. Oh, Hamas has been killing us. Okay, are you math challenged? Do the math. So on the October 7th attack, the Israelis now claim there were 1,189 civilians killed. Well, that's not true. At least about 120 of those were military personnel. So what Hamas did was they attacked military targets, killed Israeli army officers and enlisted personnel. Hey,
yeah,
that's not terrorism.
yeah.
That's war. With respect to the civilians killed, however, it's a lie that they were done by Hamas.
Mhm.
The majority of those civilians killed were killed by the Israelis themselves, carrying out counterstrikes against what they thought were Hamas targets.
Mhm.
They killed their own civilians. And that's not my opinion. We've got eyewitness testimony.
Isn't that called the Samson doctrine they have that just
Well,
shoot?
that's one of them. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't even think so much was the Samson doctrine. It was the stupid doctrine. The Israeli army and air force are unprofessional and poorly trained. And we got to get past this nonsense of believing that they're highly professional. Oh, really? Highly professional? Then why did an Israeli army unit shoot 3 of its own, Israeli hostages that escaped from Hamas, who had their shirts off,
Yeah.
no visible weapons in sight, waving a white shirt
Yeah.
to surrender, and the Israelis shot and killed them? Well, why did that happen? It happened because the Israelis have rules of engagement that encourage the soldiers to shoot unarmed civilians. And we've seen it over and over and over and over and over again since October 7th. And in addition to shooting unarmed civilians, they're dropping bombs on hospitals. I mean, even the other day, they said this special operations unit from Israel disguised as women and Arabs went into a hospital and killed 2 guys laying in a hospital bed,
Yeah.
unarmed,
Yeah.
didn't pose an immediate threat, and
Yeah.
one guy was paralyzed. Hey,
Yeah.
big tough Israelis. Yeah, you can shoot somebody who's incapacitated lying in bed. Big men, cowards. They're cowards in my book.
Yeah. So there's news out that was circulating just a couple days ago that the United States government, State Department, is talking about, planning out the idea that they want to insist on a Palestinian state. What do you make of that? Is that a policy change or just a narrative
Well, no,
negotiation?
it's the United States trying to recover and preserve whatever influence it has left in the Middle East. I mean, this war has been extremely damaging. Nobody really takes the United States serious anymore. I wrote a piece last week, and it was basically, what if the shoe was on the other foot? And so what I did was basically take a description of what it is that Israel's doing to the Palestinians. So Israel has administrative detention, which means they can pick up anybody, anytime, anywhere, either in Israel proper or in Palestinian-controlled territory, and hold them without trial, hold them in prison. And so I said, so let's put the shoe on the other foot. How about if that was the Palestinians doing that to the Jews? Do you think the Jews would have a problem with it?
Mhm.
Absolutely. They would view that as unjust. They would view that as a war crime. Well, hello. Welcome to the world of the Palestinians. The Israelis are, in my view, guilty of genocide. They are racist. They have forgotten. They learned nothing from the Holocaust. But I mean, look, the reality is Israel is not populated primarily by Holocaust survivors. And in the early years, right in the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust, as these survivors arrived in Israel, they were shunned and ridiculed for being weak, for allowing themselves to have been slaughtered. So, the Holocaust has become just sort of this device that the Israeli government trots out to earn sympathy. But the Israelis are behaving like the Nazis. They're not behaving like Holocaust survivors. They have no interest in justice or in law. All they believe in is brute force. And they don't care who they use it against. Children, women, elderly, unarmed people. That's the record that's showing up. And I say this as someone, I used to consider myself a strong supporter of Israel. I am disgusted by Israel now. They need to have their wings clipped. And they may be in the process of clipping their own wings, from what I can see.
So who's really calling the shots over there? Is it Israel's government, Netanyahu's government, or is it the State Department, or it's a negotiation between both? It's funny.
Yeah.
You listen to I was listening. I don't usually listen to talk radio anymore. But I was turned it on and I heard. I think it was Mark Levin, and he spent a good hour lecturing America and American airwaves about how awful it was that the Biden administration was so mean and so intrusive and so interventionist into the particular domestic politics of Israel. They were spending all of their effort just demonizing and restricting and undermining Netanyahu in this darkest hour of his nation. And he said, this is just a shame. No other nation but Israel gets this kind of trash from the United States government. And I was like, good Lord. And then you listen to the other, the other narrative is that, we're doing everything Netanyahu wants, but it's not that it's not that simple, is it? That there's a kind of factions going here, right? And maybe
a little
Blinken
bit
represents a different kind of faction than Netanyahu, or how does that work?
Well, this highlights a variety of problems. Number one, people like Levin, is he a Jew or is he an American? Which is it?
Right.
Is your loyalty?
Is he an Israeli citizen? I didn't know that. Is
he probably has dual Israeli citizens, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Which is the problem. I mean, you can't serve two masters.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out which one you serve. Does he serve the Israelis or does he serve America?
Mm-hmm.
Because America's support for Israel is not in America's best interest. I'll say it that bluntly. What's going on is legalized bribery in the United States. Prior to 1972, the Yom Kippur War in 73, what was the predecessor of the American Israeli Political Action Committee did not engage in direct politics in terms of funding members of Congress. After the Yom Kippur War, the American Israeli Political Action Committee became a viable institution in Washington, D.C., and started funneling millions of dollars from Israel into the hands of members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike. And even though Jewish Americans represent a very, very small percentage of the population, their political influence far outweighs their ethnic representation in the population. And so the American Israeli Political Action Committee became a very powerful force in coercing members of Congress to either support Israel or risk facing a primary opponent who's well funded by the Israeli government, which is essentially what has happened. And so what you've got going on is still to this day, it's Israel calling the shots for the United States, not the other way around. The United States could call the shots, but the Republicans and Democrats alike are cowards. They're too afraid to buck to buck the Israeli bucks as it
And it's
is.
not just the elected officials you're suggesting here. It's also the folks like you used to be in the State Department, right? That
Yeah,
oftentimes have interests that are not in alignment with America's best interest here.
yeah, yeah. So,
Did you run
um,
into that when you were there? I mean, did you sense that this was not America first was not on their radar, or I mean, to what extent you can share a window into what that world's like?
well, the joke that's always told, I think, was ascribed to either George Shultz, the Secretary of State, or Colin Powell. It may be an apocryphal story, but the Secretary of State called in the new Foreign Service officers and said, and put a map of the world on the table. He said, "Show me your country." And so uh, people who were assigned to work on Russian affairs would point to Russia or to Germany or to Colombia or to Brazil. They pointed to countries that they were working on. And the Secretary of State says, "No," I said, "point to your country. Your country's America." And so the point he was illustrating was they tended to think first of those countries that they were responsible for, as opposed to what was U.S. interest. Yeah, so that exists. But what's going on right now is the government of Israel has been taken hostage by extremists. And I don't want to call it right wing or left wing. I'll just simply call it extremists. Well, what constitutes an extremist? An extremist in this case is somebody who asserts that the Palestinians do not have equal civil rights to Israeli citizens. Number one, that the Palestinians are not human beings on the same scale that Israelis are, that Palestinians are not entitled to own or protect their property. Israel is allowed to go in and take their property, that they can be expelled, they can be exterminated if necessary. That's the kind of extremism I'm talking about. Now, if that's right wing or left wing, I'd like
Mm.
somebody to explain why it's so called right or left, what the hell that means. Uh, I boil it down to this. I think uh, for me, to the right side of the spectrum ought to be people who believe that the ultimate value is in the individual, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creators with certain inalienable rights. In other words, the notion that each person is special. Each person has rights that cannot be violated by a governing authority. The
Mm.
opposite end of that spectrum are those who believe in the collective. The collective is the moral authority, and the individual is just a cog in the machine, another brick in the wall, as Pink Floyd said,
Yeah.
and that not deserving of any special attention and certainly doesn't have any special rights. So if that's the distinction between right and left, then what we're looking at in Israel right now is a leftist version of extremism.
Yeah. Do you think that if this other fact, because they say Netanyahu is politically very unpopular and he's just
Yeah.
kind of getting all of his greatest hits accomplished before he's outed. I mean, he's ousted. Is the other regime that would take over from there? Would they be a little bit more sensible about this, or would they continue the same policy of?
No, they're going to continue the same policies. That's the point.
Yeah.
Uh, they don't like, the people like this Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's like their Homeland Security chief, um, and this other guy, Beelzebub. I call him Beelzebub, the term for the devil, Smotrich. He's got Bezalel is his, I think, his real name. They're crazy. They are convicted terrorists, okay? And I'm not throwing that around as a label to besmirch them. They've actually been convicted in Israeli courts for terrorist activities,
Mm.
and yet they're in the government. So if they get rid of Smotrich, they get rid of Ben-Gvir, they get rid of Netanyahu, you still got a group of Israelis that so-called liberals. And so they're still at that extreme, again, the collectivist
Mhm.
view of politics. They're going to pursue this war against the Palestinians, and against Hezbollah, foolishly against Hezbollah. The United States is in a position to stop this. All I've got to do is cut them off. Say, hey, you're not getting another dime. We're not sending another flight of supplies to you. No more ammunition. Put this on hold or else you're
That's
done.
what stuff like Epstein Island was for, so that they can't
Yeah.
say no, right?
Right.
They can't say no.
Right.
All hell would break loose in
Yeah.
different ways for each one of the people who would say no.
Lots of unpleasant information would come out.
And Biden's, we'd see a lot more about Biden's diaries and all that good stuff would be
Right.
right.
Yeah.
That's a feature, not a bug of the system. Those little
Right.
diaries and all that, little windows into that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people think, how does such a weird, creepy guy like Biden who sniffs kids' hair, how does he get in that position? Like, that's the feature, not a bug of him being in that position for the people who put him there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
highly leveraged individuals, right?
Right. Exactly right.
So I guess just going back to, you said we have more than a 50% chance of going into a direct war with Iran. Is that?
Yeah.
But are you now lowering that percentage because you said cooler heads are prevailing, or what?
Right now, there's no sign that the political pressure on Biden to take strong action is letting up. At the same time, from the military side, at least DOD, Lloyd Austin is, looks like he lost about 50 pounds while he was in the hospital. And he's back in
probably worried
charge.
about going to war with Iran. That'll make you lose.
Well, yeah,
right.
Very well could. So they appear to be directing, let's go back and let's bomb the site from where the drone or missile was launched, which means it probably bombed somewhere inside Iraq. Which, think about it, under what authority does the U.S. president have to launch military strikes inside Iraq? I thought they were our ally. So
it's something like Pax Romana, some kind of authority like that, right?
Well, yeah, this is, we've upended the Constitution, and Congress is, they're too cowardly to insist on enforcing it. No president should be allowed to carry out military operations overseas without the express permission of Congress. And frankly, any president that does that without the permission of Congress is a damn fool.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Well, what happens when it goes sour?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when all of a sudden, you got a lot of dead American soldiers? If you made that decision unilaterally, all of a sudden you're going to bear the entire weight of the blame.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if Congress said you could do it, hey, don't blame me. I was just following the will of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's one of the reasons you do that. You want to have the backing that this is some action carried out with at least the express support of the American people.
Well, it looks like Netanyahu's faction really wants to get that Iran war started before he's out, right? So
yeah,
that's going to be a lot of the pressure they have to do something in some way.
Yeah, but Israel, again, the Israelis, I don't know if you've ever dealt with them. Not all Israelis are like this, but I will say the vast majority that I've dealt with are the most arrogant, overconfident know-it-alls that I've ever dealt with. And it's reflected throughout even their training. So I'm a certified pistol instructor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a certified firearms instructor, just pistol, rifle. And the Israelis, when I teach people to carry concealed, I always teach them to carry with a round chamber. That means a round is in the barrel, ready to be fired. And with a semi-automatic pistol, if you don't have that, that means if you're under threat, you've got to bring the firearm up. You have to grab the slide, pull the slide back, and then the slide goes forward. Chambers are round. Well, the Israelis don't do that. Oh, no. Well, one of the reasons I teach that is, number one, from a concealed carry standpoint, if you're going to have to use your firearm in self-defense, there is a 95% chance that engagement is going to be 3 yards or less.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So the last thing you want to do is have your gun out trying to manipulate it to get it loaded when you've got a threat directly in front of you who could grab the gun. That's number one. But what the Israelis do is they don't carry around chambered. So when they draw the gun, they come out and then they grab it and pull the slide back and push it forward, and then they're ready to fire. Well, I've run tests on fully loaded as opposed to having to load it like that. It takes it at a minimum a half second to a full second. And in a gunfight, I can show you video after video. These things take place in less than 2 seconds. 2 seconds, second and a half. So it's not the kind of thing where you want to add that in. And why did the Israelis do that? I can show you an Israeli firearm instructor who admits, well, we do it because we don't have the resources or the time to do proper training.
You're talking about the government? You're talking about the military?
Yeah. An Israeli army officer describing their training. And the reason that they don't, so what they do, they're given what I call special ed training, and frankly, if you cannot carry a firearm safely with a fully loaded, with a round in the chamber, and be confident that you can keep your finger off the trigger, you shouldn't have a gun. You should not have a gun, because either there's one right way to do it. And that is, if you're carrying it for concealed carry for self-defense, round chambered, ready to fire, so you don't have to think about it when you're under stress, other than hitting the target, as opposed to, I got to rack and got to do all this other manipulation. But that's the Israelis. And if you try to argue that point with them, no, you're wrong. We got all this experience. So the same thing carries over into their politics, to their failed military strategy. They've not been beating Hamas. Hamas continues to tear them apart. And
have they taken a big chunk out of Hamas in Gaza? That's what they've leveled the whole place. Isn't that?
They've created a lot of cover that the Palestinian or that the Hamas fighters can use to cover themselves and then attack Israeli positions. They've killed and displaced a large number, massive number of civilians. That was the purpose of this. The purpose of this was not to quote defeat Hamas. The purpose of it was to make Gaza uninhabitable, so that all these nasty, despicable, dirty Palestinians would get out of there and leave it for the clean, fresh Israelis to come in. That's what's going on.
What about the is there any numbers as to how many Palestinians are still in Gaza? They were 2 million, I heard, when it started.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We know at least, there's probably over 30,000 dead now. And more.
How many have left? Do we know how many have left?
No. And part of the issue is how do they get out?
Yeah.
They're not being allowed to leave. They're basically penned up.
I thought there was like a corridor or something they're allowed to.
Rafah's been tightly controlled. Nobody's been able to leave at will. And even, most of the Palestinians are too poor to have, hold a U.S. visa or a U.S. passport, or a British visa or passport. So, it's a dire situation.
So is the plan to have them move to Germany or something? Is that what they want here?
Israelis don't care. They can go to hell as far as Israel's concerned. Literally. Go drown in the sea, go live in the desert, anywhere but Israel. And they declare Gaza as part of Israel. Same with the West Bank. They want to eradicate the Palestinians out of the West Bank, and that's a much bigger area.
So where do you see the next few, let's see this year, a lot of things start to pop off when there's an election year like this. And this is a really crazy election year where the challenger is a former president who's got like 100 years of prison sentencing awaiting him possibly. So this is a gauntlet of prison trials and civil trials to get to the White House and all the other nonsense that are designed to stack the deck. So regardless of what happens there, a lot of things pop off geopolitically in those years. So what do you expect to happen in the course of this year? What should people prepare for, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not good at predicting on that front. But I'll tell you that. So, what are the hot areas we have to watch for? One, Israel's ability to sustain combat operations in Gaza is in great question because they are losing so many soldiers and to both being killed and wounded, is along with equipment from Hamas counterattacks. What I can predict with certainty is the Israelis will not defeat Hamas in 2024. Hamas will remain intact with military capability to attack and destroy Israeli soldiers and vehicles. So that's not going away. Israel is talking now about shifting its focus to the north border with Lebanon and fighting Hezbollah. I will make this prediction. If Israel does that, Israel will suffer its worst military defeat in its history. Hezbollah will defeat the Israeli army and air force. So if Israel's foolish enough to go that route, they will pay a terrible, terrible price. The ability of Israel to continue to sustain these operations, I think, is going to come into question because what's going on politically in the United States, Biden, every place he goes for a campaign event, whether to talk about abortion or talk about his jobs program or talk about something, anything but Israel, he's being met with protest after protest after protest, calling him Genocide Joe, calling for a ceasefire. So just today, you saw that the Biden administration signed out an executive order authorizing sanctions against Israeli settlers in the West Bank, because the vast majority of those settlers are a bunch of thugs, and they're killing, they're stealing, they are abusing the Palestinians, taking their land. And so the United States but it's sort of a meaningless gesture because the United States is not going to actually actively prosecute them. And it's not like when they go apply for a visa to the United States that the passport says, hey, I'm a West Bank settler. But it's one of those things that the White House is issuing so it will look good to the Arab voters up in Michigan because they are a problem. They recently, Biden's campaign manager in charge of outreach to minority communities tried to set up a meeting with them, and they told her to go pound sand. Screw off. Mm-hmm. We have no interest in meeting with you. So a wide swath of ethnic voters connected with Arab Muslim community are rejecting Biden. And, then on top of that, you've got the people between the ages of 18 and 40 who are, strongly pro-Palestinian and anti-Israeli. So I think that political pressure from that side is going to result in the United States, at least the Biden administration, pulling back on its support to Israel. It's creating real conflict within the Biden administration, what they're going to do. The Republican side would be fully on board with supporting Israel no matter what, because they don't consider those Arab and Muslim voters as someone naturally aligned with them, even though from an issue of cultural issues, like abortion, gay marriage, that kind of thing, the Arab Muslim population actually would be more natural allies of the Republicans.
Yeah, I think the Muslim voters in the Michigan were trending towards Trump, which I don't understand in the sense that, are they expecting, Trump to not be as pro-Israeli government as he was last time? What are they expecting to get out of that? Maybe that he's a little bit more pragmatic about this.
Yeah. No, he's absolutely pragmatic. So on the one hand, Trump delivered on a promise that every president going back to Ronald Reagan had made that, we'll move our capital to Jerusalem. Nobody ever did it. Trump did it. And everybody went, this will be a disaster. It's going to lead to terrorism. Didn't do that. But Trump then went out of his way to reach out to the Saudis and to the Jordanians and to the Egyptians. And so, and they were working on the Abraham Accord. So that there was very much a desire to involve and negotiate something for all sides. So, in fact, probably Trump could get away with doing that because of the fact that his daughter's Jewish and his
Mhm.
grandchildren from Ivanka are Jewish.
Mhm.
So that just like Richard Nixon being the ultra conservative was able to open up relations with China.
Mhm.
So I think the Arab Americans recognize that at least with Donald Trump, he's not beholden to these wealthy Democrat Jewish benefactors that have been controlling the Democrat Party.
But Trump, he is someone who is also fallen out with Netanyahu, which might be part of his. He doesn't care for Netanyahu anymore because Netanyahu he felt like he did a lot for him, and Netanyahu didn't have his back when he was disputing
Yeah,
the last election.
right,
And so
right.
that complicates things too. But he's the only guy in the Republican side who could get evangelicals who are politically really strong on the Zionist front in terms of their political allegiance. He's the only guy I can think of on the Republican side who could actually get them to support him, even though he doesn't necessarily give them the aggressive military support for that conflict that they would expect typically. They'll give him a
Yeah,
pass
yeah,
on that because he's given them rewards and other things like Roe v. Wade and all that.
right.
Well, Larry Johnson, I really appreciate your time as always. And I want folks to go to your website, sonar21.com. That's sonar, the number 21.com. Anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Nope, that'd be great. I appreciate the encouragement for some more people to read what I write and offer comments.
I appreciate your time too. Thank you for your time and the work you've done to tell the truth. It's not easy for a lot of people to tell the truth. It's much easier to play it safe and make money and shut your mouth and sell out humanity.
Yeah. Spin, 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 spin.
Appreciate it. Take care.
All right, Dave. Thank you.